Against all odds, Gravekeepers have a regional top. You guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more Oz content out of nowhere, out of the TCG regional or TCG Arena regional. You have one of the coolest top cuts that we're going to get the chance to see for a majority of this format. And starting things off, we have two Sword Soul variants actually sitting at the dinner table here. And honestly, I'm not that surprised to see that Sword Soul is the bigger represented deck kind of sitting out here at the Met, especially in some of these regions where, you know, Sword Soul was a lot cheaper to get during the actual dip. And now, I mean, obviously looking at prices now, that's not exactly the story, because, I mean, it's the same story that we had with Unchained. A lot of cards were cheap. They just had to pick up the new stuff, and they were good to go. So it does help out a lot of these regions. So Sword Soul being your most represented deck out of this event. Now, winning the event was actually Phantom Knight Horus, and we've seen that deck be an absolute monster out of a lot of these events. This deck actually smashes through the meta relatively easily, and its playlines are pretty explosive. I think it's one of the reasons why the deck is able to do so well. We also had tier elements. Oh boy, you know, actually you have tier and Unchained. I'm not surprised to see both of our standard metagame picks sitting here and doing what they do best. Then we have a branded pile sitting here actually showcasing. We have noticed a huge uptick in branded as of late. I'd say the last couple of weeks, Chimera just went to sleep, and most people genuinely started going towards the actual like branded builds again with Quem and friends. It also looks like we had a Sprite version of the deck showing up out here as well. I'm actually kind of happy to see that that's kind of returning back to our meta. And we have Gravekeepers. You know, the anti-meta choice of deploying a Necro Valley, watching your opponent not really know what to do. I like what I'm seeing out here for this event. Let's pass on over to those deck lists. Our event here is the power of Phantom Knights, showcasing that, you know, you stick the Horus package in here and you are good to go, man. Like, basically being able to get all of the advantage that you want to get, setting up the adventure package so that you've got your negates and everything just kind of flows together for the deck. Also, you know, a deck having access to Photon Lord that normally shouldn't have Photon Lord access, or, you know, getting the Vampire set up for the additional mills. You know, you also have droplets for negates. It's actually pretty impressive, the things that you get with this deck. I also see that we're sporting off the Droll Knockbirds in here as our main hand trap, of course, next to Imperm. So everything looks pretty standard for this. Awesome to see that Phantom Knights were able to score a W out here, and it does kind of prove that, hey, you know, if you want a heavy combo build that is able to tear through a lot of the meta, Phantom Knights are going to be something you're going to want to consider. Next up here, we have our second place Sword Soul variant. Wow, Sword Soul was able to climb up to second place here and actually detour the meta. We got to clap for it. That's actually pretty impressive. I see that we are playing Forbidden Droplets in the main deck, so you are going to be needing those as a source of board breaking. Cool thing is, you know, you can toss off a 10-yi or so along the way, as long as you have, you know, something else to make another one. The 10-yi effects will just kind of float and help you out. So kind of free along the way for that. Sword Soul is one of those decks that does need to be careful of its resources. But, I mean, this build is incredibly standard for what it is. The only real change I feel like Sword Soul's really made along the way was this build put in a Doomsday Star, you know, and depending on how the situation arises, depending on gameplay, you know, if you do need to see that Doomsday Star, well, you know, you can get the job done. It just, obviously, you're not doing anything else for the rest of the turn, so cool stuff. Third place here is our Tier Elements Horus deck. Once again, you see the power of these Horus packages coming together and just being the absolute destructive force that it is. We're playing 2 copies of Scream, 2 copies of the Sarcophagus for the deck. Very, very standard-esque numbers, I feel like, at this point. You definitely want to keep that in mind. We do play 1 copy of the Water Unchained. Okay. And this build is, of course, building in triple copies of Super Poly. Yeah, being able to board break your opponent off and continue on along with your day is also going to be one of the best things that you could want to see. Honestly, outside of that, I'm impressed with how this build played. 41 cards is easy, though. You you don't have to change the ratios on that. You should be good, kind of capitalize and make the best of, you know, the numbers that you've been given. Also, TC Boo down there. We've seen the advantage of that gets. Next up here is Branded Despia. What is this, 60 cards? Once again, these 60 card versions of these decks, getting the chance to actually showcase and do something is always very interesting. I see that we are playing 2 droplets in the main deck. We're playing triple evenly as well. So this deck does have a game plan of wanting to go first or second. It doesn't really bother it either way, I feel like, because you're already playing 60 cards. You know, you've diversified your numbers. You are looking for, you know, good opportunities to see which lines of play you're going to go down. Post-side decking, I see we also bring in the cross-out designator, so if we think our opponent's going to be bringing in something more detrimental, we can adjust. I mean, the build's also only playing 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyce at Bring. You can see where they were planning their ratios for the crossouts to kind of help out, but even at 60, this build is actually impressively tight. Still only playing 1 copy of Branded in red, though. You love to see it. Next up here, our 5th place variant is our next Sword Soul deck. Wow. These Sword Soul decks, they look so incredibly straightforward. It's actually crazy. I will say that this build is opting for the 2 droplets. We're not trying to get too crazy out here, I suppose. Once again, I mean, it does come down to deck building, all right? Like, can you dedicate 3 slots to it or 2? We also don't have thrust in this build, which means the 2 of Herald that you see down there in the side deck, you're actually going to have to hard to draw into, which is going to be a little bit rougher, but it's fine. I also see that we are playing the Sword Soul Monster Reborn for the deck as well. Depending on how things open up for combo, you might need it. This build also isn't choosing not to play the Doomsday Star. Kind of take it with how things are. I mean, once again, you're playing Sword Soul, right? You're kind of playing down in a lot of the meta, I personally feel like. So your tech choices are going to be the thing that's going to hard carry you for sure. Next up is our Gravekeeper deck, making 6th place out here. And yes, first thing you are going to notice, we are playing the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon package, 150%. You need to have a way to set up some sort of boss monster. Like the big Gravekeepers fusion monster is good, don't get me wrong. The problem is it doesn't end the game. That's what Red Eyes Dark Dragoon is for. Also, post-side deck, you bring in some Fossil Pachycephalos as well. That way you can have more stun options for you along the way. I hate to tell you this, but Gravekeepers is still a stun deck at the end of the day. It just so happens that you also have a cheese hand wipe built into the deck in the form of Necro Valley plus Royal Tribute. And this build's not even playing triple Royal Tribute. It just opted to play 2 of, and it is working out relatively well the way it looks. So I'm pretty impressed. I like what I'm seeing here. It's so cool to see Gravekeepers actually sitting at the meta table and trying to be relevant. Our 7th place here is actually Melfi Sprite. Now that's something you have not seen a lot of this format. Obviously, like, sprites still exist. It's just, it's not functioning really in the way that you would expect it to. And that's fine, all right? Like, not everything has to be an absolute tier 1. You can have Rogue floating around out here and doing the thing. And you do see that we do splash in the little Melfi package out here. The deck is able to take huge advantage of that. I do see that we are siding Dimension Shifter. You know, if you're not maining it, you're siding it this format. You want to make sure that you can punish your opponent on the absolute best ways that you can. And not having your opponent have a graveyard, easy. Outside of that, I mean, we're still playing the Nimble package. I see we're playing the Scissors in here. We have Book of Eclipses in here as well. Yeah, it looks pretty okay. I don't really have much to really say about this. I think for most of how the deck wants to play, it does enough for the meta. And our last list out of top 8 here is actually Unchained. Boy, so we are playing the tour guides, all the good stuff, playing the dark contracts, okay. We only, ratios are still fine in the main deck. Yeah, the main deck looks fine. Side deck I don't see anything wrong with. Same thing with the extract. Once again, I mean, most of these Unchained decks are extremely simple. You know, we're playing Double Pot of Prosperity, which I guess is a little bit more techy versus 3. But if you really want to change it, you up it to 42 cards. Or, you know, you shave something else off, go down to 40. And most of the deck is extremely optimized at this point. So what do you think about the breakdown for the TCG Arena Regional? Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. See your beautiful faces back here in day, guys. Peace. Patrons! Thank you. Ah!
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.